Hello, it's been a while since the last video, huh? Well, while I was occupied with exams at university and playing a lot of the new Elden Ring DLC, I used the rest of my free time developing new things for the game. Since the last devlog, I've implemented and improved a lot of things. Now that I have 2 months of progress to share, it's easy to lose track of everything that I want to talk about. So, to show things more naturally, I think it would be interesting if we travel around the lands above the Sea of Fog and talk about the new things as we find them along the way. We will start in the first area of the game, where the player will begin their journey in the final version 2, and end our journey in the depths of the map, visiting a hidden and ancient city. Before starting our journey, I want to show some detailed improvements I made with the visuals of the project. The first improvement was the character itself. In the last video, I created this new character, and it said that my plan was to improve the animations in the future. So I polished the animations and smoothed the transitions between the movements using interpolation. Also, one key feature to enhance the character was the inverse kinematics in the character's foot. This basically makes the feet of the character always positioned automatically on the ground. This small implementation adds a lot of more depth to the character and makes him more integrated into the environment around him. At first, I tried to use a custom inverse kinematics for the foot that I made myself, but I encountered some bugs. After researching a lot, I found a useful asset that enhanced a lot of the features I previously tried to implement myself. So I used this new code I found and customized it to fit my new character animations. With all these implementations, I also thought of adding a small script to make the character blink. This is a almost unnoticeable detail, but gives a lot of more life to the character. This was very easy to do. The materials of the character's eye are separate from the rest of the model. So I just changed the color of the eyes and the intensity of the emission every few hundred seconds, giving the animation of blinking. So some post-editing commentaries here that I didn't put in the script. First of them is that I had to recreate all the character skeleton for be able to use new animations in Unity, such as inverse kinematics. For this, I had a lot of problems trying to fit my old character in this technology, so I spent, 3 hours trying to fix the foot of the character.
We'll go into edit mode. Select this one. Just select the target.
So this dude had 3 views, and he carried the knowledge of WoW Blender for no reason whatsoever. So thanks to that guy. Other thing is that I tried to create elevators, and elevators are one of the most complex topics in game development. Do not underestimate, they are really hard. So I tried for some days, you can see in a clip that I forgot I recorded. This is not added, by the way. I was really listening to this, tired already, and trying to understand what was happening. In the end, I just gave up. Maybe I will try to do elevators in the future. For a while, I thought about the possibility of adding a day and night cycle to the game. On one hand, day and night mechanics bring a lot of dynamic and immersion to the game, giving the player more diverse scenarios and vistas to diversify the gameplay while revisiting old levels. However, this also costs a lot of more development time since the developer needs to account for multiple environment sounds and always check if the level is readable at different times of the day. Since my game is highly focused on exploration, I decided to add this mechanic. The multiple visuals and skies will bring a more natural and diverse feel to the game. So, I started researching the development of day and night cycles. Strangely enough, there is not enough material on the internet about this topic, so I had to grasp a lot to create my own system. Basically, the code I made controls the main light source of the scene and calculates the rotation and intensity based on the time of the day. To give me a lot of more artistic control, I made multiple fields to change the colors and gradients of each time of the day. Also, I used this time of day to control other visuals of the scene, such as clouds, fogs, and stars. The final touch to the system was the addition of textures for the sun and moon. I'm still deciding if I should keep the moon there, because we're not on planet Earth, so to speak. So maybe it would be cool to put a more uncommon celestial berry there. With all of this put together, I had a day and night cycle. If you pay close attention to the system in games, you will notice that the shadows do not move constantly. Instead, they move every 10 seconds or so to give a more consistent visual to the game and give the impression of a more natural passing of the time. Maybe I will add this feature in the future. For some time now, the empty void around the map was annoying me, so I started researching how I could create a water shader to put an ocean around the island of the game. Water is a deep topic, and we could talk about hours and hours looking at some academic papers. Of course, we don't need this level of detail for my game, so we can implement more modest techniques and use some visual tricks to create water. I programmed a shader that uses a big texture that functions as a reflection of the player's screen. This is called a screen space reflection. This technique is really performance heavy for the GPU, and with a 1:1 scale of the screen, it means we would have to render our game 2 times per frame. This is bad. Of course, I will not put the reflections on max quality. The idea here is to put maybe at half of the screen quality. The player will also be able to change the quality of the reflections on the settings in the future. A simple reflection doesn't make an ocean already, so I added moving normal textures and a color to the shader. These distortions are enough to hide the low resolution of the reflection and save some performance. I put this shader on a big plane. Since this is a big plane, the player could see the edges on the horizon of the scene, so I made the ocean fade away when the pixels were far from the center of the map. There are some missing features in the water. Particles when interacting with the ocean, an effect when the camera is below the water, and sound effects. These are things that I will add later, but for now, my desire to fill the void that was around the island is finally gone. With all these visuals added until now, my RTX 2060 is running this project build at a constant 70 frames per second. Since this is not a high-end computer, this is good enough for now, but of course, improving performance is one of the main points I will keep in mind for the future. Also, the beta for Unit 6 was released, the game engine that I use. I checked a few of the plugins and assets that I use on the project, and most of them seem to be already compatible with this new version. So I plan on trying this new version soon to check if I had a visual or performance boost. With all these upgrades, I programmed game zones to be able to change the visuals of the areas. These are basically invisible collision boxes that change the environment around the player when they enter, changing the visuals and sounds. With that system, I can program each area of the game to have unique colors, particles, sounds, and volumetric fogs. For example, I implemented some sounds for the fields and the desert. The customization range is pretty big. Also, I made an option to make a zone use reverb in the audio, which will be handy when making caves and interiors in the future. Okay, now that I've shown you all the new stuff I programmed, it's time for us to travel around these lands while I show you some new locations that I brainstormed. The closest point of interest from our journey start is the village. This will be one of the first places the player will encounter, so I plan to show some basic mechanics and concepts of the game here, giving hints of what they can expect in future areas. For now, I just modeled some simple foundations to test the design and feel of this place. I'm not diving into the lore for now, but I can tell you that this village is forgotten and the nature is already reclaiming for some time now. From this simple village, I want the player to see all the important landmarks of the world, so we can take a look at the main tower in the center of the map, the floating castle, and a small forest. This small forest is the closest point of interest from the village, so I think most players will go there. This is our second stop, the Forest of Unsheathed Swords. In the center of this location, we can find a handful of rusted swords. In the middle of this graveyard, there is a stone statue. This is a keeper statue. Again, I will not dive into the lore for now, but these guys were responsible for defending important places or items. Now, most of them are malfunctioning or completely destroyed. But this one still works, and if we get too close, it will get a little angry. I worked on these statues for 2 weeks with the little time I had between my exams. I often drew designs for them until I was satisfied with the result. After I decided the design, I started programming, modeling, animating, and making all the sound design for the statue. At this point in the journey, we can't do anything to get closer to this statue without dying, so we will leave this forest for now. This is our next stop, the Island of the Dead. Yes, I tried to make a homage to the painting. I want to populate this island with some sort of puzzle or item. For now, I just made a basic structure and tested some models I made. To get to this island, I made a small puzzle. There is no bridge to reach this location, so the player needs to study the environment around for some time to notice that a small path is submerged in the water. With that, they can slowly walk to the island, following some shallow places in the path. These are some of the most ancient structures on the map, hinted by the polished stones resembling a bit of our own old monuments in the world. I wonder why they are here and what they meant for the people who made them. Okay, continue our journey. Going to the other side of the map, we encounter a natural bridge leading to the other side of the plains. I showed this place a few times in my last devlogs, but now we have an entire section below this place. This is a swamp flooded with water, and it has a lot of more fog than usual, which blends well with the dead trees around. I do not know yet what kind of structures and interesting points I will put here for the player to find. For now, I put a item hidden in this swamp, a shield. The shield doesn't have a story yet, but it already has a functional mechanic. With this equipped, the player can parry attacks. For now, this doesn't have much utility since we don't have enemies walking around the map. But we can try using it on the keeper statue we found in the forest we visited. Going back, we can time the attack patterns of the keeper and finally connect a parry. This will disable the statue for some seconds. With this, the player can receive a new item from it, finally completing the puzzle of this area. Well, I don't have an item to give the player yet, sorry for the letdown, but hey, at least we were able to defeat the statue, for some seconds at least. This was not the only item that I added since the last video. I also added this umbrella made of magic papers for the player to slowly fall from high places. The umbrella doesn't last long in the air, but the player can use it to reach new places. Now that we've explored all the locations in this section of the map, we can finally end our exploration by going on the top of the left wall. There, we can find a small entrance. If we follow the hidden path into the depths, we can find the hidden city. The hidden city was one of the last places to be created in the lands above the Sea of Fog. Here, the last faithful followers of a leader found a place to rest and hide. However, over time, they were naturally forgotten along with the city. I want this area of the game to be creepier and more disconnected from the rest of the game. Horror is one of my favorite genres, so I use this opportunity to explore ideas and designs I've wanted to use in my games for a while. Like multiple areas I've shown you, this is just a block-out structure to get the feel of the area. In the future, I want to texture and enhance the models. With that, I also want to give more detail to each section to create a more interconnected and natural traversal between the buildings of the city, improving the gameplay while exploring these places. Even with this rough start, I tried to follow some design principles, such as showing the key interesting points for the player when they first arrive in this area. I was highly inspired by the manga Blame, where you can see a lot of these structures in multiple panels. I was reading some chapters and really liked the unique designs the author imagined there, so I took some inspirations. Now, let's talk a bit about what's next for development. I have some things in mind for the next steps. The terrain as it is now is working well enough, but I think the layers of the map are too divided from one another. You can clearly see that we have 3 heights on the map, and each one is too flat. Also, I think that the stones I'm using are too small and are not giving interesting shapes to the edge of the terrain. So I want to improve all of this by creating a steeper surface and modeling more interesting shapes for the rocks around the edges and cliffs. I will use this opportunity to also make a shader for the rocks and make them blend more thinly with the ground. Another point of improvement will be the hoverboard hiding. I want to finally improve its visuals and design. So again, if you have interesting ideas for what this hoverboard should be, I'd like to hear them. The most suggested ideas so far are carpets and clouds. I think these ideas are interesting, but we could go more insane with the concepts. The first thought I had was flying around with a sword, but our upcoming indie game already has this concept. These are the 2 main points I will be working on, but with that I will constantly add new items, mechanics and improvements on the visuals as always. So, this is it for this devlog. Thanks for watching, bye. Oh, I forgot to put this in the script in time before recording, but I also added these giant pillars with gardens on the top. This is it. Garden pillars. Giant garden pillars. Nice.